Last spring, California Governor Gavin Newsom went to Florida to meet with students from New College. That's the school that's become sort of the focus of Governor Ron DeSantis' anti-woke crusade. Newsom then traveled thousands of miles, again outside of his home state, to meet with voters in Alabama and Mississippi and Utah. In December, Governor Newsom went to Georgia to debate Governor Ron DeSantis on Fox News. Yesterday, he was in South Carolina talking to young voters at Morris College, an historically black college. And now Governor Newsom is hitting the campaign trail in Nevada ahead of early primary voting in that state. If you notice, this is a tour of red states, and it is one that the governor is doing as an emissary of the Biden campaign to tell voters what is at stake in November. Yesterday, while in South Carolina, I had the opportunity to speak to Governor Newsom about that work. We talked about the upcoming election, about his party's messaging, and about reproductive rights. We also talked about Donald Trump's dominance over the Republican Party and the way Trump is running his campaign this time around. It's clear, though, that his ground game is way better than it was in previous election cycles. Much better campaign. They've racked up the endorsements. They have a stranglehold on the Republican Party. They have a get out the vote campaign that is, unmatched, especially in the Republican primary. I mean, is that cause for trepidation?
No, because look what we've done. We've outperformed in every single election. Outperformed by significant margins in every election, 2018, 20, 22, 23. And not just at the national stage. When you look at some of these mayor's races in Jacksonville or Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
I mean, in every election, Democrats are winning. It's one of the great winning streaks in modern American politics, particularly for an incumbent president. And I think Dobbs has a profound impact in terms of that framework and that reality out on the streets.
Well, the latest stat, 64,000 women and girls got pregnant from rape in states where there are abortion bans.
And Texas was the worst.
You're the governor of a large state. I mean, do you think these Republican governors who oversaw these bans either didn't care or didn't understand what they were doing?
Well, I don't think they care.
I mean,
really
that's Republican women who get pregnant.
It's disgraceful. It's sick. Here's the problem with the Republican Party. They always get in trouble when they actually get what they want. I mean, these 6-week bans before you even know you're pregnant, before you can even get a doctor's appointment, criminalizing young kids that were raped for trying to travel so that they can have a life and the freedom to decide for themselves, versus guys like Tim Scott and Lindsey Graham that we have to go through and ask permission. It's a serious moment. And they're coming after contraception as well. That's how extreme they are.
Yeah.
That's not me idly saying, that's a fact.
I know you have strong feelings on this.
A lot of things, I think.
Yeah, right?
I do.
Insert subject here.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people recognize what Donald Trump did to the Supreme Court to make the overturning of Roe possible. However, if he's asked about it and on national television on the stump, he lies about it, he obfuscates, he's very mushy, and it is working with a certain section of the electorate. I think it's 80% in New Hampshire. Trump wins 80% of Republicans who wanted a national abortion ban and 44% of those who don't. Similar kind of thing in Iowa. He is getting a pass on this.
Can't.
So I mean, short of saying over and over again he's responsible, how do you further convince potentially skeptical voters that this dude really stands for the end of choice as we know it?
Over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, we've got to flood the zone on that message. He can't be allowed to get away with it. He can't. We've got to go aggressively.
I'm not here to argue in Trump's favor. I'm just saying some people don't believe he's in favor of a national abortion ban. Maybe because they remember his position being pro-choice in the 90s.
In a nanosecond, he would sign that bill if it landed on his desk. Period. Full stop.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing against that. I guess
he's responsible for the state of affairs today. We just have to define the opposition and create that contrast. But we have to flood the zone to remind people of his record and the reality that we're living here today and the fear that women and girls have in this country because of the conditions he directly created through his actions. And that's our job. That's my job. It's our collective job. It's not Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's exclusive job. That's what a campaign's about.
You know what it's like to run a big campaign. You know what it's like to have to deal with donors and to ask them for money. If you're a Haley donor Are you looking and saying, yep, I'm going to give you a couple more $1 million to continue
you
this
saw
march?
that Trump tweet said, if you do that over my dead body,
You're not going to be invited to MAGA camp.
Yeah, it's like thuggery. But it's so predictable.
Or like schoolyard petulance. It's like some strange combination.
Yeah, there's a childishness to it. But I really believe this. He is weakness masquerading as strength, Donald Trump, in general. In a primary, I've said it, he's a T-Rex. He'll devour you or you mate with him. Can't be beaten in a primary. But in a general election, I think he's the most flawed candidate in my lifetime. He is damaged goods. He is not as entertaining as he once was. He's more unhinged than he ever was, more extreme, obviously more dangerous across the spectrum of issues. And if his entire campaign is around campaign stops to the courtroom, in a general, I don't think that dog will hunt this year. I think he's much weaker than he was in 2020 and 2016. He's a force to be reckoned with. I have never counted this guy out. To me, this was a fait accompli that he was going to be the nominee. Day one, been saying that. That being said, he is a very vulnerable candidate in general.
I do have to ask you, we hear from the polling, anecdotally, that one of the issues the Biden administration has lost a lot of confidence. Young voters, voters of color, voters in places like Detroit, key to the president's win, are very upset about his position on Gaza.
Yeah.
You've watched this from afar. I know you're not in the administration, but do you think that they made a misstep there?
Well, I've watched it close up, too. I went to Israel and met with the president and prime minister right after October 7th. Saw those videos, those unredacted videos that I can't get out of my head, and the atrocities of Hamas. And I absolutely applaud the president's clarity and conviction as it relates to Hamas being a terrorist organization that needs to be eliminated. That said, I'm also, and this is me speaking, not on behalf of anyone else.
Understand.
I'm a father of 4, and you can't watch these images of what's happening in Gaza without your heart breaking. I mean it. And with respect to Bibi Netanyahu, I met with, for him to double down on stupid by somehow suggesting that two-state solution is not the solution that's preferable is a huge tactical mistake. Not political, situationally in the United States of America, but globally. That has profound, I believe, consequences. And I appreciate President Biden's clarity and conviction on that. I also appreciate his clarity and conviction trying to end this war, moving beyond the situational rhetoric around a ceasefire, ending this war and rebuilding Gaza and allowing the autonomy and freedom that the Palestinians deserve.
You are an excellent emissary in terms of passion, engagement, articulation, all of the things that, make for a good campaigner, though we know you're not running for president yourself.
No chance.
No chance.
Yeah. Who in their mind would want to run when you have someone of such esteem as our incumbent president of the United States, with a record of accomplishments and a man of character, a man of decency? I'm old school. Talk about loyalty. I'll go to ends of the earth for this guy. I really would. I'm not making that up.
So there you have it. Governor Gavin Newsom is not trying to take President Biden's place on the ballot this November. Someone please tell Fox News.